says we are live. I don't know if it's live on there or not.
We are back. We are back.
All right.
Had a few technical difficulties, but hey, the show was going good, and hopefully some of y'all are still up. But Ryan was talking about we was talking about the DNA as far as runners and sprinters, and he was talking about as well how coaches need to evaluate their athletes a little bit more instead of going off, the visual, then throwing them in the 800, 100, whatever. And my question to you, I know you asked it. You answered the question. I asked you, can any runner be a sprinter? And you said, with the proper training, you agree with that. One question I did have for you as well: can a mid-distance runner transition into a sprinter? I know they're used to. I know the muscles are not moving as quick. Do you think it's possible for them to transition into a sprinter?
Well, the simple answer is yes. The blanket statement is yes. Again, I think it's one of those things where if the athlete reveals themselves to you that maybe, just maybe, you've been training them in the wrong direction, or maybe their background has been in the wrong direction, but they've got experience in other sports outside of the sport of track and field where they are doing a lot of what I would call twitchiness. So if it's like American football, basketball, volleyball, or something like that. And what's interesting, and what I would tell people, especially with young kids, and I know Tony Holler would love this, is that you need to spend a lot of time with young kids moving fast as much as possible. Because endurance is something that we can throw on top as we move through. And I know me being the 400-meter guy, or the critical mass system, which we can kind of get into as well because of my mentor, Sean Burris, who coaches Justin Robinson, who's the American record holder in the 400-meter dash. Like, a lot of times you look at these kids and they got talent and they're just good, but they could be misplaced. There was who Mike Rogers is, right? You remember Mike Rogers, American sprinter, second most under 10 seconds in the 100. He's from St. Louis.
No. Okay.
All right. So that dude is world-class indoor guy, world-class outdoor guy. Now, he's always been a sprinter, but he's got sisters that were Ashley and Alicia Ursary, who ran at Florida. And what was funny is the events that they were good at in middle school, they flip-flopped when they got into high school. So the other one was more like the longer sprinter, and the other one was the short sprinter. And so what happens is maturation still is happening as the athletes move through their training and in their development in high school. So there are plenty of people who might be seen as a specialist over here, but eventually with time can move this direction as well. It's just about what you choose to stimulate. And the problem is endurance. It's not a problem. It's a good thing. But endurance is easy to move, where speed takes discipline and a means of doing it all the time to see it grow. And so, again, not to quote Tony Holler too much, but when Tony talks about speed, he's like, speed's like a tree. So you plant that tree in the ground, you don't notice that it grows every day. But every day it's growing a little bit with sunlight and moisture or rain. And then 10 years down the line, you look at a picture at the front of your house, and then you look at this tree and you're like, holy crap, that sapling grew into this magnificent, monstrous maple tree out in the front of your house. Well, that doesn't happen overnight, but it happens every night. So that means that you got to be stimulating that stuff all the time. Now, people who want to criticize the critical mass system are like, well, you're not valuing absolute speed. Well, I would tell them on every rep of a 150 or a 200 meters or a 350, there is a period of time where my athletes are running at absolute speed. And why is that? Because when you race model the 400, in the first 60 meters, you're going all out. You're going all out through the first 60, because that creatine phosphate energy system is only there at the beginning at its fullest. And then it taps out a little bit, and then you move into different gas tanks as you move along. So we never, ever, even when we're doing like tempo training, we might do some repeat 800s at a slower pace or whatever it may be. We're still rocking that first 40 or 50 meters, and then we settle into our pace. So I look at, to answer your question, I have seen it time and time again where we've been able to move athletes down and we've been able to move athletes up depending on their abilities and what they kind of show through their maturation, their training, their ability to attack, their ability to figure the events out. And I've had it go both ways. It's always easier to move them up because naturally a person can just get more enduring, but we want them to be fast. You know, you want them to be fast 5 or 6 times in a weekend, you know? So how do you set your training up around those 5 or 6 efforts? And then that's how you, so like, for example, the kid from Texas bowling, right? The white curly haired kid, you know, I'm talking about. Bowling. Okay. All right. So, I mean, he ran a 44-second split or 45-second split at the state championships in Texas. Like that doesn't happen without a decent background. And his training for his high school coach was more volume based. Now, I don't know about his club coach or anything like that, but he still was able to long jump 26 feet. He was still able, it was just insane. He was still able to run under 10 seconds in the 100. He could probably run under 20 in the 200. It didn't hurt him. I've had 3 girls finish runner-up in the state of Missouri in the 100-meter dash, and they got better as their careers went along. And we were somewhat starting in the middle and then working our way down. But the good thing is you want to have an athlete that has a little bit of everything in a high school setting so that they can show you what they're really good at. So if you don't give them a steady, like I think about it like a diet. You need your carbohydrates, you need your protein, you need your dairy, you need your vegetables, and you need your fruits. If you take any of those things away in training, so if you're not doing speed endurance, special endurance, absolute speed, acceleration, tempo, lactic tolerance, then they're missing out on what I would say is a good diet for a high school sprinter, which means that if you give them everything, then they can show you through everything what they really are and where they need to go, and you don't artificially hold them back or reduce their capabilities in one of the sprints by not giving them the ability to run one of the sprints. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So as far as the sprinters, do you think the training is more technical than the mid-distance runners? Do they need to focus on? I'm pretty sure they do have to focus on more, like getting out the blocks and stuff like that. Do they have to invest more time in their training than a 800-meter runner or a 1600-meter runner?
Well, so for me, I never call my kids mid-distance kids. I call them long sprinters. So every kid in my program learns to come out of the blocks. So we had a young lady, she was 3rd in the state of Missouri in the 800-meter dash, and she ended up running for the University of Illinois for like a year and a half or something like that. She's a very talented kid. But she had to lead off for us. And she was not a 400-meter, 200-meter girl, but she was the best girl that we had as a leadoff. So from that kid and beyond, we've trained everybody to learn how to accelerate, because acceleration is still relative. Yes, the angles might be a little bit different, but like if you're running the 800 and you don't get out, now you're going to have to go through a pack of 16 human beings that are nothing but elbows, sweat, and body odor, you know? And I'd much rather only have 2 or 3 individuals in front of me that I got to deal with in the race as opposed to 16. So you still got to know how to accelerate. And so for us in our program, like we'll run through all of our drills and we finish all of our technical drill work, which is the upright running. We move our way down to a 3-point or 2-point stance. Now, not with blocks, but I still have all the athletes lined across the football field, you know, or the soccer field. And, you know, I go the most set count and I hold and I do different cadences and then I clap and everybody takes off, even my thrower kids, because you just never know who's going to help you. And teaching good acceleration is important. Obviously, for a sprinter, the acceleration portion of their race, if they're a short sprinter, is going to be much more significant. And what's cool about training acceleration is you can almost do it every day. And it also is less fatigable than upright running mechanics because it's using the quads, the glutes, your hips. It's using a lot of different motor units, where when you're upright running, most of that work being pulled over the center of mass is done by the hamstrings. Right. And that's why you see a lot of hamstring pulls, because people have a deficit in strength there. But what's cool about acceleration is, and I would, by the way, coach, I wouldn't start here, but you can get all the way up to 16 accelerations in practice. I wouldn't start there. But if you think about how a track meet goes, let's say your sprinter runs the 100, the 4x2, the 4x1, and the 200. They got to warm up for all 4 of those races. Okay. So now you're talking about a bunch of drills, probably 3 accelerations before each one of the races, right? And then you have the accelerations in the races as well. We'll add that up, 3, and for each one of those. Okay. So that's 4 times 3, that's 12, right? And then you have the 4 races, that's 16. So isn't that interesting? And an athlete can tolerate that volume. Now, that's not where I would start. Okay. The other thing I would suggest is when you're thinking about technical stuff, and I'm going off a tangent here.
No, you're good.
The other thing I would suggest is that you train the athletes to warm up, like you have to have a competition warm up. They should practice that. And then each event that they go through, every round that they go through, that warm up on that day needs to get smaller, because they're already dealing with a certain level of neurological stimulation and fatigue. And so like the first warm up, very thorough, slow cook the meat, like Justin was talking about last time when you talked to him. That's awesome. Slow cook the meat, Then as they go through, that warm up doesn't need as much cooking, And so for a sprinter, yes, acceleration is important, but long sprinters, it's important too. It just might not play as big of a role in the meat of your training. Like I might not set an entire unit aside for a long sprinter in acceleration, where I would do that for a short sprinter. I would set an entire unit aside in a practice, giving it a day, if you will, for that, where acceleration for the older kids or the longer kids would probably be throughout the practice, throughout the warm-up, and throughout the reps themselves.
Since we're talking about warm-ups, let me ask you this, because I see it sometimes when I'm at these meets with my daughter. Do you think it's possible for a coach to warm up an athlete too much, especially the sprinters? I see them doing, back-to-back 30s before they run 100, and the athlete is gassed in the heating area. Then they don't run as well. And my thinking is maybe 10:30s was too many. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, certainly in a practice or in an actual competition, the accelerations are going to be spread out throughout the different warm-ups, the 4 different warm-ups throughout the competition, and including the races themselves. A key for me when I'm looking at my athlete is, we want that good general warm-up, right? And then maybe we do, so that would include some, consistency of low skips, side skips, short sprint walks, maybe a lap or 2 of that. Then there's going to be a dynamic flexibility component, leg swings, ballistic stuff, hurdle mobility. But all of this is picked out and set aside. And then, you might do 8 drills for the first warm up for the first event. Then what would happen in the second warm up is you do 1 lap, you cut the leg swings in half, you cut the hurdle mobility in half, and then you cut the drills from 8 to 6. And then in the next event from 6 to 4, from the next event 3. But it also determines, like, when you're in Texas and it's 100 degrees and you're in Houston and it's 100% humidity, but somehow it's not raining, but it's 100% humidity. Okay, in Texas. So, all right, trust me, I know. I've been to Houston many times.
Oh yeah.
You don't need as much of a warm-up. In that situation, it's more about the motor control. And here's what's really interesting too. If you really want to get the benefit of the neurological system getting overdrived, right? 2 or 3 heavy medicine ball tosses and 30-meter sprints are more than enough. And then you sit for 4 or 5 minutes before you're called to the start line and you go. And the thing is, in Texas, in these warmer states, they're already warmed up a lot. You don't need nearly as much after that first general warm-up, because I'd rather the kids be fresh. In fact, sometimes if you look at it in those hot conditions, just the 2 or 3 starts you get out of the blocks with maybe 4 or 5 running drills in front of it, it's going to be more than enough. way more than enough. And, the problem is that a lot of coaches want to justify their job by giving instruction, both verbal cues and then activities to do. The perfect world for me is when I look up and I see my athletes warming up, and the warm-up that they're doing is the warm-up at the beginning that simulates kind of what we would do normally at the beginning of practice.
Yeah.
Then the second warm-up is reduced. And I have all that scripted. It's all scripted. And it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And what I did is I gave one of my assistant coaches who ran college track as well, I said, this is what I want you to take care of, because you're a distance coach, and I know distance, but you're a distance coach, so you're going to be in the middle of the field all the time. So when the kids are warming up, you're going to be the most likely coach that they're going to be able to find, because you're standing in the same spot taking splits. I want you to be responsible for the warm-ups. The athletes have to come to you to know what to do. But then once we get a month and a half into the season, they don't need to come to you anymore. They need to know what to do. And then our captains are responsible for managing those groups of athletes and making sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. Now, granted, if they're being bums that day, because sometimes they're bums, I'm gonna intervene. But that's the process that a coach should go through, where you're less and less a part of it, but also that the athletes have a very clear expectation of, this is what we do to warm up, and the warm up gets smaller as they get more and more stimulation underneath their legs from the meet itself. Because you don't want them to be dead. I can see athletes doing that all the time. I remember you were in the state championship, and there's this school that's really good in the 4x1, and those girls were doing handoffs for an hour and a half, and they were the number one team in the state. And I told my girls, I said, listen, I said, you see what's going on right down there? So we've already taken care of our business. Those girls are going to blow their leg. And sure enough, they finished dead last in the finals. And we surprised everybody by finishing second without an individual girl who made it to the state finals that year in an individual event. So, you can really screw up athletes with an over. And here's the thing, truth be told, if you're a coach in Texas or in a southern state coach, wouldn't you want them to be a little too fresh instead of a little too tired in competition? Like, to me, that just makes sense. Like, I'd much rather shut it down. Like, sometimes the girls, like if we have a pre-meet practice and we're talking about this handoff situation, if they can't get it in 4 handoffs, we're done. We're done. You've done it all year long. We'll get it on the day. You'll have your focus. You'll have your juices flowing. But I'm not going to blow your legs out the day before a competition running 12 exchanges to try to get it right. Well, you're going to get it right on the 12th because you're going slow, because you're tired.
Yeah.
Slow people can take handoffs all day because they got no talent, and it's really easy to grab something when it's moving that slow. It's hard to grab it when it's moving that fast. So I'd rather be fresh. I'd rather be undercutting a warm-up than overcooking.
So it's safe to say good warm-up, stay loose before you race. What'd you think?
Good warm-up, stay loose. A coach needs to have a plan in place. The plan needs to be practiced. If all things being equal, less is more, and less is more throughout the meet because they're getting fresher. You don't want them to do more, and definitely don't want them to do something they've never done before. That's one of the weird things is you'll see in the end of a championship phase that kids will start going, they'll get desperate and they'll start doing weird stuff or mimicking a real fast kid and what a real fast kid does for a warm-up. And it's like, that kid's warm-up sucks. He's just way better than you. So if you want to beat that kid, you need to have a better warm-up than going over there and trying to do what they're doing. So less is more, have a plan, and less is more throughout the competition.
Yeah. And we're talking with Ryan J Banta. I'm saying your last name right, correct?
Correct. Like Santa, but with a B, baby.
All right. He's the author of Sprinters Compendium. You can find that book on Amazon as well. Ryan, so tell me a little bit more about your book. I know you have some good reading material in there, but that book also have drills in there. Is that correct?
Correct. So one of the things that I tried to do with the book when I was organizing it, besides getting all the authors that we talked about on part 1 of this, is the idea that I wanted to take coaches through a practice. So you basically read it chapter by chapter. And so the first 7 chapters are organized how I would organize a session. So you've got your general warm-up suppleness training. Then you've got your running drills. Then you have acceleration, maximum velocity, speed endurance, special endurance. And then you have weight room, plyometrics, injury prevention, team management. So it's like all this stuff that you're taking through your practice. And so that's what I try to do. Then what I try to share with everybody is all of the mistakes that I made as a high school coach, as a young man. And then the things I learned from those mistakes. Then what science says why my solution might have been the right thing. And then I have all of the coaches in there go through and give their suggestions and ideas about that particular part of practice. So I'm a big guy. Like there's this European coach. His name is Franz Bosch. And even though Franz Bosch has never coached any elite sprinters, he's worked with a lot of rugby players and soccer players and some track and field athletes on speed. And he's got all these very neurologically technical drills that are challenging in movement. But what's neat is these movements blend into skills that athletes need. And so I try to take you through in the book the basics and then building on those basic drills and phases. So like I have in my program, I have 4 phases of drills that will run through a high school track and field season. And then in those 4 phases, I have 2 different packages. So I have an A day and a B day. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to stimulate and fatigue things, but then give things 48 hours, have a 3-week to 6-week buildup so the body adjusts, adapts, and goes, ooh, this is neat. But then after about 3 to 6 weeks, depending on what you're doing, the athlete gets bored, and that's the time when you need to stimulate them again once they've mastered that basic movement to a more technically challenging or disciplined movement. It's kind of like leveling up in a video game, right? You know, in Street Fighter, you learn how to throw the fireball, but then eventually you need to learn how to throw the fireball, then the Hadouken, and then a spinning kick, right? And so as a track and field athlete, the basic might be, hey, we got that B skip, that fireball, but then we've got to learn how to do the B skip into an acceleration run and then into going over a hurdle or transitioning into a decelerization to protect, you know, their abilities to slow down. I mean, these are all things you want to do. And so that's kind of my thing that I like to do is challenge them in those different phases, but not reinventing the wheel. We're just doing a new twist on the previous set. So now instead of just doing an A skip, we might do an A skip, B skip complex into an acceleration run, into a straight leg. And so in the book, I've tried to do that. And for me, what I found is a lot of coaches are lazy and they don't want to do the technical stuff. Or when their athletes are doing the technical stuff, they're talking about Leroy and Billy Bob and Susie and Darla and what they did in class instead of correcting what the athletes are doing in practice. My most important coaching comes at the beginning to make sure that these kids are moving correctly. Now, some people poo-poo these drills because they're like, they don't really do anything. Well, that's because you don't give them time. Go back to the idea of the tree, right? The tree needs water, the tree needs sunlight. It grows over time. It takes 500 hours to correct a technical problem. You're working on it for 500 hours to change that motor pattern. And why do we want to change that motor pattern? Because we want to make sure that that athlete is using their front side and backside mechanics properly to not overload one or the other and tear a quad or tear a hamstring. It's a very delicate balance, and you want the foot to strike correctly. Then you want improved, what I call dynamic mobility, by hitting these positions that may be exaggerated or really grossly overdone. You're strengthening those muscles in that movement. And then the last thing is you're getting flexibility from those movements as well. So if there is something that you screw up or you hit a funny movement, maybe an athlete, you know, you're in the 4x1 and they clip your spike and you're trying to get the baton super close to you. Well, you don't want the athlete to pull a hamstring by taking a funny step. You want them to absorb it, deal with it, and then move forward and continue on as best they can to the best performance out of that bad situation possible. And so we do all of those things to improve the technical model, improve health, improve the firing pattern, having more mobility, and then to strengthen the small muscles in the foot, the butt, the ankles, and the knee that don't often get stimulated, that need it for that athlete to take on bigger loads later.
Yeah, I definitely get that. And it goes with the saying, trust the process. You know, where you're doing these drills and this training, because you know how some parents get, and you know they want a quick turnaround, you know, but it takes time with those drills. Um,
Can you hear me, Coach? I can hear you or see you. I can't hear you, but I can see you. You're still a little pixelated, but you got green bars across the top.
all right, here I am. All right. All right. I want to ask you this. I did a podcast on Texas Track Dad COVID-19 action plan, and what it was. Um, a lot of these kids, they're getting pulled from their classrooms, um, and they're having to stay at home with their parents. And my take was the parents need to have some type of plan set for if this happens, because a kid can be in a class with somebody who's positive, and they're going to get quarantined for 14 days, even though they don't have COVID, right? So they can have state coming up next week. They can have a district game coming up. They can have something coming up, right? So my deal was parents get with the trainers, coach or coaches to see what type of training they're doing and put together some type of plan. So if this happens, they can have something to go off of. What you think about that?
I think it's good. My buddy, his name's Tyler German. He actually developed a plan over quarantine for people to do. It's like, what can we get done at home? You know, like what are the bare necessities, right? So like you can do, I think anybody can do acceleration at their house. I think they can do short sprinting at their house. And even if you don't know like the distance, right? So you're like, man, I don't know what 200 meters is on my street. Well, cool. Then just run for as fast as you can for what would be your PR in the 200 meters or the 100 meter dash or the 400 meter dash. And the energy system that you're stressing will be pretty similar, and then you can still do, standing and kneeling accelerations. If you got a medicine ball, and now those were like hard to come by, medicine balls and weight vests over quarantine. Everybody was trying to do their Bodies by Banta program, over the summer. But if you can get one of those now, there's a lot of stuff you can get done. Then I think online there's Boo Checkschneider, who's the LSU jump coach from back in the day. He's got a bunch of his jump series, like plyometric training, on YouTube. And then you can do that at home as well. And even if you're in a cold, like you're listening to us and you're like, man, Texas, I can go outside every day as long as the hail ain't hitting them in tornadoes and whatnot. But the reality is that you can still do a lot of that stuff in your house. You can run up the steps, you can jump up the steps, you can jump in your house, you can do in-place jumps. There's a lot of things. There's this guy back in the day, his name was Casey Combest. Casey Combest, he had a little set of blocks built into his house, and it wasn't even that big. But for 20 meters, he was the fastest man on the planet. He ended up having, I think he still does, have the high school indoor 60-meter record. And a lot of his training was done inside his house, So there's things you can get done and be creative with. And I think that every athlete should have something set up where they can maintain those qualities of acceleration, max velocity, and then elastic strength in their house. If they've got those three things, regardless of what happens with COVID, and they don't have anybody sick in their house, they can maintain a level of fitness that will be better than a lot of other people that don't have that plan. So I think it's really good to have a plan, because COVID's not going anywhere anytime soon, ladies and gentlemen. Europe, 3 major countries have shut down their country for a month, and regardless of what's going to happen tomorrow in the presidential election, COVID's still going to be around, so it's more likely in the winter to be around than in the summer when people are outside. So you need to have a plan for sure with acceleration, absolute speed, and elastic strength.
All right. Sounds good to me. Before we get out of here, give me 3 of your top female high school athletes we need to be looking out for this year.
Oh my God. I don't even know, man. Well, I got one at my school. Kaylin Tate is a stud, and Kaylin Tate was one of the top girls in the nation last year before COVID hit in the indoor 60. And outdoors as a freshman, she was one of the top 15 freshmen in the United States in the 200-meter dash. So you take that indoor stuff with Coach Banta's outdoor stuff, and we could have some magic happen. I'm really looking forward to seeing what she can do. Outside of that, man, it's been so goofy. I've been so isolated. I don't even know who's out there wrecking shop because we lost the spring. If we didn't lose the spring, I'd have a whole list of athletes for you. Gosh darn. I can't even think anybody outside of my own kid to really be paying attention to, because I just know how special she's going to be. What I will tell you is, and I'll throw this down, if we stay healthy and we get the stick around the track this spring and somehow we make it through an entire season without a huge COVID shutdown, I got a chance to take that state record out in the 4x2. I got a young lady who was an all AAU national qualifier in the 200. That's a freshman in our school right now. Her teammate was a sophomore, also AAU national qualifier in the 200. The girl I just told you about, who's Kaylin Tate, was an AAU national qualifier. And then I got another girl who was the freshman of the year in the 400-meter dash. And, of course, now they're juniors because they missed their sophomore season. That event I think something really special could happen. And that'd be cool, you know, to have the 4x8 record, to have the state champs in the 4x2 and the state champ 4x2 record, and to have the state record in the 4x8 and then have the state champs in 4x4, you know, like then we're covering all those bases and nobody can tell me, well, you know, Coach Banta, you're only good at this or you're only good at that. It's like, I'm good with what I got. So whatever I got, I'm going to maximize.
Oh yeah.
You know, if I've got some stud, you know, feed the cats type kids, I'm going to feed some cats. If I got thoroughbreds, I'm going for the Triple Crown. You know, if I've got some monster endurance runners or some powerful throwers, you know, we're going to do everything we can to maximize their abilities. And that's what a good coach should do. You know, be very focused on their own team, what they're doing in-house, not worry about who else is out there. Not to knock your question, I'm just ignorant. I don't know anybody. I haven't been paying attention to the national scene very much, and I feel bad that I don't have an answer for you. But at the end of the day, take care of your business at home, find out the talents you got, and you'll be in a good spot.
Oh yeah, no doubt. So can you tell everybody where they can find your book and find you on social media?
Yeah, so on social media, on Instagram, you can find me at ryan.banta. On Twitter, you can find me at Sprinters Compendium. So I stop at the end because I ran out of letters. So my at title was too long. To buy the book, you can find it on Amazon. You know, obviously that's a trusted deliverer, but if you want to buy it straight from the source, you can go to the company called Vervante, which is my print-on-demand company that produces my book. You can find it there. And then for more conversations and talks like you and I are having right now, not only can you continue to follow TexasTrackDad, because hopefully we'll be able to do a couple more of these conversations and make sure my internet's good too. We can get this thing rocking.
Yeah, we will.
But also my YouTube page is Bantasmo1978. And on there, I talk about all manner of things, life, training, team management, sports psychology. And that's where I have a lot of my content as well.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I already seen some comments where people were saying thank you for bringing you to the show, and you might get some sales pretty soon here. But thank you for being patient as well. You know, you was perfect. So if y'all looking to buy the book tonight, it's a link. It's on the top of our page in this post. You will see it in the title section. So you can click on that link and it'll take you straight to the book. If you want to buy the book tonight, and look him up on Twitter. He's on Twitter. He's on Instagram. You can look him up there as well. And like you said, also go to his website to check him out. But I want to thank everybody for bearing with us tonight. I know we had some issues with the technical stuff, but thank y'all, and I will see y'all again soon. All right.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, guys. Bye.